Organizing tips people never really want to talk about. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized, and today we have some organizing tips that oftentimes people don't want to talk about because they involve end of life. And we have an expert professional organizer with us today, Heather Ahern from thefunctionalhome.com. Heather, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Thank you, John.
Well, now I kind of tease that these kinds of end-of-life issues that involve a lot of documents that people want to have organized, but often they don't want to talk about it. You know, and there's a lot of stress at end of life. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the psychology first of these end-of-life document planning things and how you deal with that as a professional organizer.
Well, sure. Estate planning is something that we all need to do. We all know we need to do it. But just like some other organizing, it's easy to put off. Everyone thinks they need to do it when they're 70, when they're 80. But we really need to get hold of these documents and have them secure for our family well before that. So it's about making a plan about where you're going to put it so people can find it.
Okay, well, let's talk about what would be ideal if you could have it any way you wanted it. How old would the client be who's coming into you say, you know what, I want to be organized? Not only, and it's not for you, it's really for your loved ones, the family that you leave behind. And you don't want to leave them with a bunch of mess, right? So what's a good age to really tackle this?
Well, everybody who owns something has an estate. So if you own a car, you own a home, you have an estate. If you're married and you have children, a little more important to have a will or some sort of trust. Healthcare proxies are very important. And again, it's not always end of life. Sometimes it's just when somebody gets very, very sick. You want somebody else to be able to make decisions for you. Those are your healthcare proxies, your durable power of attorney. Those are papers that in a time of stress, when somebody is sick and or dying or has died, your family will want to put their hands on as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, this is part of our Countdown to NAPO series, and you're one of the speakers at the National Association of Professional Organizers Conference this year, coming up in a few weeks. And what is the talk that you're going to be giving? And kind of, I'm assuming it's kind of geared towards organizers, but what is that talk, and what are the main kind of points of it?
It is slightly geared towards organizers, but all of us have an estate that is digital now. We all have some sort of part of our life that's online. We have digital assets, accounts, logins that we use to get to those accounts. Many of our clients load their pictures up to a cloud. They have emails that are really important to them. Their Facebook is their timeline. It's become more and more in the news how important a timeline is for people to save, and families want that after someone passes away. So your digital life is a very important piece of the estate planning. So my talk is advanced planning for your virtual afterlife.
Okay, well, I want to come back to that in a moment. I want to get back to some of the basics. Let's say someone has nothing in place. What are the first one or two things that someone can do on the journey to having a good estate planning and being organized?
Putting it all in one place or two places and letting someone know where they are. So, you know, a filing cabinet or some sort of filing system, if someone has that, there's certain things you're going to want to have in there. Again, things you want to put your hands on right away, healthcare proxies, durable power of attorney. And then a safe deposit box is a nice idea for things that you would be difficult for people to replace. That could be military papers if someone served, adoption papers, divorce or marriage records, things like that, that can be helpful when you're trying to close out an estate.
Well, what about wills in general? A lot of people, when they're younger, think, well, it's going to be a long time before I die, so I don't need a will. And sometimes, or people maybe have the foresight, they create a will maybe before they have kids, and then all of a sudden, their family dynamic changes. Is it good to bring a lawyer in at a certain time and let them have copies or know where all these copies are as well?
Well, it's a great idea to have a lawyer put your will or your trust together because the laws are different in all 50 states. And it's a difficult thing to do. Although I know people who feel that they can do them on their own. However you do it, it's about storing it in the right place. So Some people put them in their safe deposit box because they feel that's the safest place to put them. You have to check in your state to find out what the laws are. Not everyone can access a safe deposit box after someone else has passed away, even if you're a signer on the account. I'm in Massachusetts. If I'm a signer on my aunt's account, I can go in after she passes away and remove anything I need. But in other states, that's not the case. So you need to know what your rules are in your state.
Now, do you kind of work with maybe like a master checklist or something like that when you're meeting with someone for the first time and kind of doing an inventory of the necessary? I mean, what are the top necessary documents? Obviously, a will and maybe a trust, right? Depending on their financial situation. What are some of the other things? I mean, especially when it comes to like belongings. I bet that professional organizers deal with people's stuff all the time and organizing that. Do you have some system for dealing with like the items, things that people own?
As far as an estate goes?
Yeah, either as I'm just thinking about a way to communicate with somebody new who you're sitting down with them and say, okay, yeah, you've got the will, but let's talk about the stuff. Do you use a checklist of some sort or inventory or walk around with them with a video camera? I mean, what's kind of the thing?
I haven't had a lot of clients go to that step. Okay. Again, most of those things are going to be covered in the will or the trust. Okay. A lot of times people will have wishes. So those things are maybe something specific for a certain person, and they have that included in their will, but maybe they have added something later and they leave a note. How legal that is, that goes back and forth. But yeah, people will have funeral directions a lot of times. They'll have wishes as far as what they want to happen if they get sick, those kind of things. Those are, again, really important documents. Possessions sort of fall under the bigger umbrella of the will and the trust. So that becomes part of the estate to thrash.
Well, now you've obviously worked with a bunch of people without revealing client information. What's kind of the most unique thing that you've seen written into a will?
Written into a will?
Yeah, well, like you want to leave $1 million to the cat or something like that. I mean, there's crazy stories you hear about that.
I do hear crazy stories. I will say I don't read my client's will. That's their personal information. The craziest things I see are where people store their wills. Oh. Again, going back to my clients being able to find a will after someone passes away. So people typically put them in their dresser drawers, their sock drawer, their underwear drawer. They tape them to the backs of pictures or mirrors, or sometimes furniture. To them, they've hidden it and it's safe, but it's really difficult for families to find if they haven't left that information for them. And the refrigerator, the freezer, is another place that wills are often stored. And I have heard lawyers have recommended that to their clients.
Is that because they can maybe be fireproof or something, or what?
If you don't have a fireproof safe, and years ago people didn't have fireproof safes, and they didn't go to the expense of that, so the freezer was the safest place. And it worked, except that people didn't always know to look in the freezer for the will. And in some states, you have to have that will rather quickly after someone passes away, and you can't always use a copy. You want to have the original, so that gets tricky.
Now, do you recommend your clients like having family members get together when you meet with them, or is it better to do it in a smaller group dynamic like that, or just meeting one-on-one so there's no pressure or bias from family members?
Well, for me, I'm just asking them when I'm working with my clients, usually one-on-one. But we're usually, as we're putting things away, if we're creating files or we're deciding things are going to go to a safe deposit box, we're leaving a trail. So if we put 7 items in a safe deposit box, and maybe those are military records and Social Security cards, and maybe even a copy of their will, we're leaving another piece of paper in the file that tells somebody where to find those items, what's kept in the safe deposit box. So we're leaving a trail. And I ask the people to, send the same copy to their daughter or their son, or maybe to their sister or brother, whoever is going to be their executor, so that they have a heads up as to where to find it. And if they're going to keep it in the freezer, send them a letter and tell them this is my items and they're in the freezer.
Wow. Right next to the frozen pizza, right?
Right.
Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the session you're doing at NAPO, some more of the advanced strategies that professional organizers would use, and we'll get a little bit more into your particular business and practice there in the Boston area. So it's Heather Ahern from the Functional Home on Keeping You Organized. We'll be right back. Looking for a file folder that can go the distance? Try new Flexi Folder from Smead, the heavyweight folder with movable and erasable tabs. You'll find yourself using them again and again and again. The Smead Flexi Folder is made of durable 14-point stock that stands up to wear and tear. The folder also features an extra wide 1/3 cut movable and erasable tab. This tab allows you to write, move, and erase it with ease, so as your filing needs change, your folders don't have to. These tabs are simple to install by simply punching the tab out of the sheet, using a permanent marker to label your tab, and positioning wherever it's needed. Once a project is over, erase the tab with a standard white eraser and you'll have a brand new folder. When it's time to rearrange that folder in the drawer, simply move the tab to a new position. Available in standard manila or bright primary colors, these heavy-duty folders will make a lasting impression on your file drawer. We are back now on Keeping You Organized with Heather Ahern from thefunctionalhome.com in the Boston area, a certified professional organizer from NAPO, and also on the, you're the Director of Professional Development at NAPO New England. What does that title and job entail?
Well, as a professional development director, I oversee programming for our chapter. I have a committee that takes care of programming, and we are launching a professional development seminar this fall. And then there's several other smaller groups that, Golden Circle and Success Groups. I think I have about 7 or 8 committees under me.
Okay. Well, we also just kind of before we went to the break there talked a little bit about your kind of your advanced strategy talk to the professional organizers at NAPO coming up. And but before I get in depth to that, with professional organizers, how are they doing on this subject? Do they kind of have themselves organized? I'd ask you on the spot if you have all your estate stuff put together, but
yeah, it's funny. We're human, so we know what we're supposed to do, and not all of us always do it. When I give this talk, I often start by asking people if they have an estate plan, and I often give this talk to organizers. And it's funny how many hands go up and how many people sit sheepishly in the seats and don't raise their hand because they haven't quite gotten everything figured out yet. As long as they start, you have to start somewhere. Even us organizers, we have to start somewhere. And yes, my papers are all in order.
Well, I'm sure they are. And even if they aren't, I don't want to press you any farther on that. Well, let's talk about that talk to the professional organizers. What are some of the main things that you're covering for them? Because I'm assuming it's for them working with their clients, so which those things would also relate back onto the client. What are some of the advanced strategies?
Well, this is about taking that advanced planning piece and putting it on your digital life, your virtual world. So, again, it's your logins and your passwords. If you want people to have access to your email after you're gone, if you want to make it easier for your executor to get into your bank accounts and know what you have. A lot of times now we choose paperless statements. It makes it much harder to put that trail together of what's out there, what people own and what they owe. A lot of our clients and a lot of ourselves, we load our photos up onto a cloud. If the mother in the family is taking pictures on her phone all the time and uploading those to a cloud, that's great. But if the husband doesn't have access and something happens to the mother, they may not have left themselves a way to get those pictures out. We don't have photo albums anymore. People don't just walk into the living room, pick up the photo album and flip through it. They go online, they go to the cloud, and they flip through their pictures.
And we have to make sure people understand that the cloud is not heaven. It's a little bit below there, but we're talking about the digital space, right?
A cloud is actually a bank of servers that are holding your information. And sometimes they're in the United States and sometimes they're in other countries. And each one of those little differences, have different terms and services. So you want to read when you're agreeing to one of those apps or to some of those cloud service, what are your terms and services, and will somebody else be able to have access, or does it terminate upon your death and nobody else can get in?
Now, are there specific apps that you recommend? Because I'm sure they're out there that probably handle a good piece of this process.
There are a lot. It would be hard for me to recommend one, but people could easily do some Google searches and find some things. There are services out there that will keep track of all these assets for you. And you can allow someone in after you've passed away to find them. They will email somebody after you've passed away and let them have access to all your information or the information that you choose. So you may send an email to one person and say, these are all my accounts and you can get in, and these are all my logins and this is what I'd like you to save. You can send another email to another friend and say, these are all the accounts I'd like deleted, and let that person have access to that.
Well, I mean, and I think more and more things are going to a technology base, and sometimes the older generation's a little more resistant to technology. Let me ask you this question, and this is more inside for professional organizers that want to get more into this business. How do you get new clients for this? Is there a good process for, especially this is the kind of organizing that people don't want to talk about,
That's
so
true. Well, there's a comfort level here. So a lot of times I will work with a client for a while before they're comfortable getting into this. Some people call me to do this on day one, but that's unusual. Usually if I'm working with a client, we get around to this paper. We start broaching the subject and what do they have. If there's a lot of anxiety around paper while I'm working with somebody, sometimes it comes down to they don't know where their important papers are. And once we get their filing in order and we've set them up with a system, you can see them physically relax. You can see how much calmer they are. As far as how to market this, I tend to do it with my existing clients. Although people do know I do it, maybe, but it's not something I think you could go out and find clients just specifically for this. As organizers, we're working with all of our clients' paperwork. It doesn't matter, what it is. We just try to weed out, obviously, the telephone bills and the cable bills and the electric bills from the 80s and the 90s, so that there's room for these kind of papers.
Yeah, and it's probably a piece of the bigger part of the organizing puzzle. I mean,
Right.
like you say, you're working with them on all kinds of organizing projects. This is just another logical piece to go in.
It is.
Well, let's talk about your particular practice there in the Boston area. I don't know if you do virtual organizing as well. What kinds of things, is this a specialty that you do, or it sounds like you do other organizing? Do you do residential, commercial? What's kind of your work mix?
I mostly do residential, and so this piece fits in very well with that because, that's just part of paperwork, is part of residential organizing. I don't do virtual organizing. I tend to like to work one-on-one with my clients, get in there and help them make decisions. And my company logo is make sense of your stuff, create peace in your home. So again, it's all about putting things in logical order and helping them have a calmer, happier place to live.
Well, how about as far as technology goes and just general home organizing? Are you seeing a trend more towards digitizing things or using technology to help get organized more?
I am, and that leads me to why I tend to preach the needing an estate plan for your digital assets, because I do find a lot of people going paperless. Maybe the husband pays all the bills, but he does it on his phone or his tablet, and the wife doesn't have access to that. Again, leaving that trail. For myself, I sit down with my husband every couple of months and make him pay the bills with me so that he sees my process, how I log in and how I do this. I think it's just a good idea to share the information as much as possible so that someone else knows how to do it.
Well, how about your own personal organizing? We ask a lot of the organizers on this show, do you use a paper planner? Do you use a digital planner? What are some of your organizing tips that you apply on a daily basis for yourself to get things done?
Well, when it comes to planning, I do tend to use my phone. I use my calendar and my phone a lot. I find it's just easy to have it with me and to keep my schedule there. I do tend to make lists on my phone, and I do pay my bills and keep track of a lot of things online. So it's important, again, to make sure I share that with everybody. But yeah, I find technology does help to make it a little simpler for me and for most of my clients.
Now, do you see, though, even with this kind of trend towards more technology, it still seems like there's a lot of paper out there. What kinds of things can you feel like you can't digitize or you can't organize with technology that you have to organize in more of a physical nature?
Wow, that's different for everybody.
Well, maybe think about a client maybe in the last month or two that you've worked with where you said...
I was just thinking that, some of my clients that have small businesses, they have a lot of receipts, and so they have a lot of paperwork that they need to keep track of for their taxes. And some people will scan that in, but, it takes time. So some people will just, file it. They'll just keep track of what their receipts are for the year. They have a lot of paperwork that goes with their business. And so kind of trying to teach them how to condense that down and store it properly in case they ever need it for an audit.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot again here. In the last week, what's the one organizing tip that you gave to either a client or a friend or family member to help them accomplish something that they were struggling with?
Boy, this week I've actually been helping a few clients move on after a loss, and that's really difficult for people to get through. And I find that it's difficult enough to make decisions, but once they've decided that they no longer want whatever the object is, not to stress about where it's going to go, if they're going to donate it or if they're going to sell it or if they're going to give it away. Just move it to the other side of the room. Start putting those things away that they don't want anymore. Make it easy on themselves. And then when that pile starts to grow and they start to feel like they can walk back and say, now that I see that there's so much here, maybe I'll just donate it. I won't take all those steps to try to sell one piece or give one piece to one person. They're trying to simplify, make one donation, keep track of it, and help them to move through things a little quicker.
Well, that is excellent advice to end on. Let's give people your website so they know how to reach you in the Boston area, greater Boston area, I would imagine.
I'm actually south of Boston.
Okay.
I'm in the South Shore. So, south of Boston, sort of towards the Cape and Providence. My company is The Functional Home. And you can go to my website or my Facebook page. There's sometimes tips and advice on there too.
Well, awesome. Well, Heather, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch up with you at the NAPO conference coming up. This is our countdown to NAPO, so we're getting excited for that to come up, and hopefully we can have you back on the show again in the future.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. It is Heather Ahern from thefunctionalhome.com today on Keeping You Organized.